In the early 1970s, Mario Puzo and Francis Ford Coppola created two of the most influential films in American motion picture history, recipients of 9 Academy Awards, including 2 for Best Picture.
Mario Puzo's The Godfather, one of the best-selling books of all time with more than 10 million copies in print. A book about a particular segment of our society, so unique and accurate in characterization that its impact has been felt over and over again throughout the world.
I think the important thing, the thing that made The Godfather romantic, it's sort of an odd word to use, but it's...
Actor James Caan.
When you put the book down, you kind of had the feeling of wanting to join this great organization.
Michael Rizzi, will you be baptized?
I will.
In adorno suavitas tuatem effugare diable aperquariere medicum Dei. Michael, do you believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth?
I do.
Singer Al Martino as Johnny Fontaine.
We Italians, we have an old saying that life is so difficult that we need 2 fathers. And I guess that's what's so nice about having a godfather.
We're having a great time here. Wonderful!
How do you go about making a motion picture based upon a literary achievement of such wide acclaim? A book so dynamic that it created a new casting director with each new reader. That seemingly desirous and impossible task fell to Oscar-winning writer-director Francis Ford Coppola. Every member of the Corleone family was thoroughly researched, tested, and selected from every available source of the entertainment industry. The role of Michael, the Don's youngest son, went to Al Pacino.
In the family complex, there's a sense of trust. It's very powerful. That's what is preserved. An island that was invaded as much as Sicily. The people formed families so that they could have this trust within the family compound, you see. If you had this sense of loyalty, you could combat the invaders.
She's been with a winner.
Singer Morgana King as Mama Corleone.
He's always been on top of the situation, and they have this large family of children that they love very deeply. She's very, very involved with his life, but she doesn't involve his life into the family picture. That's outside. It always remains outside. Hey, really thinks Michael's going to come out of this whole situation to possibly run for the presidency. You know, she thinks that's perfectly logical, that her son Michael could be the president of the United States. Whereas Sonny's just a good boy, and she's probably been protecting him all his life against all of the hassles that he found to get involved with.
A way of life is brought to the screen more understandably and ominously than was ever thought possible.
He makes things come alive. If he touches...
Actor Richard Castellano as Clemenza.
Feel the texture. If he tastes wine or anisette, you can almost taste it yourself.
He plays a guy who's 65 years old, who ages 10 years in it. It's amazing. He comes in the morning, he looks great, you know, he's healthy and young looking. He puts on that makeup, and for the rest of the day, he's sort of, you know, this old guy.
I watch his scenes because he brings a dimension to this Don that is so beautiful. I love watching him. I love the character that he becomes, that man from the other side of the world who is very family-orientated and family-minded, and everything he does is for his family, and that's the way he extends himself to his friends. And I don't know, Marlon has that deep warmth. He really has that marvelous eye of an actor. This morning, the Don died in the scene, and it was heartbreaking to see this old man die. It just, you know, I didn't want to see that image go away, you know. It hurt. It really hurt to think that Don Corleone was dead.
See, there was a necessity for Don Corleone. for Mr. Brando's characterization. There's a necessity for the syndicate. For if there were no necessity, it wouldn't exist.
To visually create the realism of the book, 90% of the picture was shot on locations in and around New York City, including a secluded side street on Staten Island, which represented the Corleone family compound. Scenes such as this one between Michael and his girl Kay were filmed against the background of the wedding of the Don's daughter, a sequence which took a week to shoot and employed almost 750 extras. The making of a motion picture based upon a great novel has the tremendous problem of visually satisfying every satisfied reader. No role was more difficult to cast than that of Don Vito Corleone, the Godfather. Actor Marlon Brando was director Coppola's only choice for that role.
The horse is a horse.
It ought to be shot on one side and so on.
The pet lovers, when they protested that, is we ordered it from the same source where to get the pet food.
We wanted a horse that matched the real horse. Right. And then we had to put, even then, we had to put a certain banging pattern on the head.
My history with The Godfather was very much the history of someone in trouble. I found the first movie very tough to do and very tough to finally pull off. I was a young director. I hadn't really done a lot of work, and I had this opportunity to do this novel. I thought of myself as a professional director making an adaptation of a novel. You know, I knew that as the book became more popular and more successful, I realized that in a sense it was beginning to outclass me, and that I wouldn't have gotten the job had, 5 months later the book become the sensation that it was. And even in the early weeks of the production, I remember he was having a lot of problems. Every time he mentioned Brando's name, one of the executives is the right word, said, if you mention his name again, you're out. And the guy who was then the president said, as president of Paramount Pictures, these are his exact words, as president of Paramount Pictures, Marlon Brando will never appear in this motion picture. I remember I just sort of fell on the floor and I said to them, at least give me a chance. They're all right. If, number one, he does the movie for nothing, if he does a screen test, and if he puts up a bond guaranteeing that none of his shenanigans will cause a delay, you can consider him. So I said, all right. And I called up Brandon, whom I didn't know, and had made that contact, and said, oh, what if I do some makeup tests, I said, to get around the screen test. And I went and I brought Italian cheese and cigars and stuff. And we were just shooting, and he saw the cheese and went like that, and he started to take his hair and put shoe polish on. He says, it's like a bulldog. He put some on. I want to have, and he's doing this right there, and I'm shooting it, and then he started going, he put Kleenex in his mouth, and he had black. It's remarkable to see. As a matter of fact, Bobby Duvall, Al Pacino, and myself flew up to San Francisco, the Zoetrope. Eleanor, his wife, cut our hair, put a bowl over her head, cut our head, and with a 16mm camera, we improvised and did some stuff. And that was it, okay? Don Corleone, please.
Hey, it's good, huh? It's good.
That cost him 4 corned beef sandwiches, I think, the whole, When I read The Godfather, whenever I would see the character of Michael, I saw Al's face.
Luca Brasi held a revolver against Hallie's head, and my father told Hallie that either his signature or his brains would be on the contract.
He wasn't a star, which was not pleasing to the executives at that time. He didn't look like stars look like at that time in the business.
So that when they were suggesting, like Ryan O'Neal or Robert Redford could be like a Northern Italian, I already had Al's face ingrained.
Michael, why are all these people bothering your father on a day like this?
Oh, that's because they know that No Sicilian can refuse any request.
For some reason,
on his daughter's
they were
wedding day.
not happy with Al's test. But I knew Francis wanted Al.
And 104. Action.
I was aware that they didn't want me, and at one point, it was actually, you know, it seemed okay finally. I thought, Francis, look, I mean, we'll do another movie together. I was relatively young, so I didn't know quite. I thought, well, maybe they were all like this. You know, they get all. I had seen movies about Hollywood. I thought maybe that's why all the screen tests.
Well, this is a slow wedding. This isn't a wedding.
One night, I got a call from Francis. He was in New York, and he said, Jimmy, and I could tell from his voice this was not his idea. Jimmy, why don't you come in and test? I said, test what? What, do you got a Porsche you want me to drive around the block? What do you want? Test what? He said, please, they want you to play Michael. What? Please. So I went in.
168.
Michael, why are all those people bothering your father on a day like this?
Well, that's because they know no Sicilian can refuse a request on his daughter's wedding day.
Oh, good.
I don't think you can name an actor that wasn't there. They were all sitting around on cement floors from 7 in the morning till 8 at night. Guys with, some guys talk like this, I mean, that guy's from all over the world.
They tried to kill him, my father. They did. They nearly did. Mr. Brazzi went after them. And so the story goes.
A little point of memorabilia, that was Marcia Lucas, who was the editor, George's wife, who cut those tests all together. And she told me that, she said, cast Al Pacino because he undresses you with his eyes.
Marcia said that.
Yeah.
She was right.
And Diane said, I said to Diane, Diane, which one do you...
I was out, and then the Saluzzo scene came. They kept me after that scene. That looked pretty good, I guess, when you could shoot a guy. Because they wanted me to assert myself, so there's that kind of assertion.
I remember a thing that happened on The Godfather that when we were working on it, I got the message that Bob Evans felt that there wasn't enough violence in the picture and that they were going to literally send a violence director in to kind of come in and do the violence.
It's funny.
I went that night with my sister Tally and my little boy Gio to the set, and with Gio playing Carlo, who was like 8 years old, 9 years old, and Tally being there. I think I may have had a video camera, but I went in there and said, okay, violence.
And we went down and we rehearsed it, and we thought how interesting it would be if she was pregnant and pitiful and hid behind the curtain and...
Knock down all the dishes. Then you go over there and knock down all the vases. Then Gio, go in there, and here's this little boy going in with the strap, hitting his hand. Now run to it. Now break the window. Now crash the thing, And we shot a test in New York, which I think exists, that was so electrifying.
I think I did. Did I do the screen test for Sonny? Yeah. Me and 4,000 other people or whatever, we all came in.
You're gonna take both of them out on me. You're gonna take them, and you know what they're gonna do to you? And you know what you do when you knock somebody off? You take a gun, you shoot him right up against his fucking head. That's what you do. You get his brains all over your nice new Ivy League suit, Michael. That's what happens. How do you like that?
It was spectacular, but it was Sonny really like killer, like nothing you could ever sell.
I know you can do it. All right, you prove it to me. You can do it? Go ahead, prove it.
Trying in Sicily, when I was older, Brando had some thing in his mouth, and I went to the same dentist and just got a smaller one. And I tried to, get a little heavier for that period because he was a little older and a little mature and so on. And so one of the things we were trying to decide was about the mustache, whether I should have a mustache or not. And it was a whole thing back and forth to make this commitment to have the mustache or not to have the mustache. So finally, I think I said, you forget these things, but I think the way I remember it is, I said, well, why don't we flip a coin? And just flip the coin, and heads it's on, tails it's off, and so it was heads, I guess.
The second movie, we had a disastrous preview 3 weeks before it opened in San Francisco, and we made a lot of changes that week, and then showed it in San Diego, and it seemed to play much better. And I worked very hard on Godfather 2 to try to have you feel what these people were feeling.
At the end of Godfather 2, as you remember, there's a scene where they flash back to the family in the happy days, and Sonny was still alive, and everyone's sitting around the dinner table.
Here's the cake.
And in this scene, Brando was going to be there too, you know, as a small cameo. And up until the very last minute, they expected Brando to appear for that day of shooting.
Oh, honey, that's nice, eh?
Should I put the candles on now?
Yeah, go on. You help, all right, Carl? Sure.
Unfortunately, when the day finally arrived, Brando didn't show. There were legal problems, deal problems, etc. So Francis improvised and came up with the idea of making the event that everyone had gathered for Brando's surprise birthday party.
He's here, come on.
Come on. Come on. Stupid.
One feels the presence of Brando without seeing him, which almost makes him more mythical and more of a memory than seeing the man's face would have done.
The first Godfather was just like nonstop anxiety and, you know, wondering when I was going to get fired. And
we had 2 kids, and I was pregnant with a third, and it was like kind of a horrifying time because it seemed like at any moment the whole thing would collapse. And
I remember once being in the men's room, and you know, some crew members came in and they were talking, you know, like, you know, what a piece of junk, and that guy doesn't know what he's doing.
No one knew when you were going to be fired on that first movie. And so the thing is, just get enough footage in the can, you know. Keep going, keep shooting.
For me, the toll booth scene is inspired by Dean Tavaleris's and Arthur Penn's work in Bonnie and Clyde.
Kurosawa is the father of all violence in modern movie. Kurosawa via Arthur Penn and Bonnie and Clyde and Sam Peckinpah. So there is a certain way to treat violence, a more gory way that really comes ultimately from Shakespeare.
How many takes? 1. Yeah, I had 147 squibs on me. Just before we were about to go, he's wiring me, and he goes, I never put this many squibs on a guy in my life. I said, I don't think it was necessary for you to tell me that now.
There may be more Michael and Francis there are than me.
I just simply pictured things a different way. And in some cases, it caused a ruckus now and then, you know, because it's like saying, well, we can't do that because that's never been done before, you know. Well, I never did it in that spirit. I just simply did it because I liked it.
His imprint on the film was indelible when Godfather came out. I mean, that was a job of cinematography, you know, that everybody couldn't help but notice.
A lot of things that I do with overhead lighting, or a lot of things with that form of lighting, actually came out of a necessity to deal with Marlon Brando in a given kind of makeup. It was an example of designing something to make one person work, and it was extended throughout the rest of the movie. I got a lot of criticism because they said, well, you can't see Brando's eyes. There were times in some of his scenes where I deliberately did not want to see his eyes, so that you saw this mysterious human being thinking about something or about to do something, but you didn't really know what the hell was going on.
Gordon, the Prince of Darkness, huh? I haven't, examined underexposing a lot because I'm terrified of it. But with people like Gordon who know just how much to do it and all that kind of thing, he has made an art of underexposure.
I may have gone too far a couple of times. I think there was a scene between Al and his mother, who was played by Morgana King in part 2. I did one scene I went too far. I think Rembrandt went too far a couple of times.
It wasn't the fact that it was so dark, it was the fact that the studio said, how are we going to show this at the drive-ins? That's the old adage to say, you got to put a light in, you got to see the people, because of the drive-ins. Well, the drive-ins were going out at that time, so that didn't mean much to us.
New Jersey? When I shot Godfather 1, My decision to use yellow in the movie. The movie was very yellow-red. It bordered on this kind of brassy feeling. The reasons for that were because I just thought it was right, but yellow broke out in the motion picture business related to period movies for a long time after that. It's not one thing that you do from a visual point of view that makes anything work. The art direction has to be right, the wardrobe has to be right, the shot structure has to be right, and the lighting has to accommodate whatever it is you're introducing related to filtering, etc. So you can't just do one thing.
Paramount wanted to save money, and so one of the things they wanted to do was to not film it as a period piece in 1946, but instead to bring it up to the 1970s, make it contemporary, because that would be cheaper to, shoot in the contemporary style.
They hire a guy to direct the movie. None of them had high expectations for the movie. They paid very little for the rights, very little to Mario Puzo for the screenplay, which he wrote with Francis.
The powers that be at the studio, as they were seeing the dailies, were horrified. Not only, they were horrified with everything. They didn't like Brando. They thought he mumbled. They thought it was much too dark. I wasn't moving the camera.
Francis had to fight every day to get his vision on the screen. It didn't come easy.
I went and visited him on the set where he'd thrown the phones through the doors, or fists through the door and phones across the room, and they had the phones all lined up. They had the door sitting there. All of his outrage, and I knew that there were various people on the crew trying to take over the production.
When the picture opened, the night it opened, to the Lowe State Theater in New York, Henry Kissinger said to me, "You know, Bob, here's a man who's a killer, a gangster, who's killed hundreds of people. And yet when he dies, those people in the audience are all crying. That's touching greatness. And this man, Coppola, has touched greatness."
I used to say a big part of that movie was Coppola standing up for what he wanted and holding his ground, and then I realized, no, that's not part of it, that's it.
He knocked down the wall, that the establishment had put up against people like Francis and Scorsese and people like Friedkin and Bogdanovich.
People were willing to take more of a chance on young talent and to see innovation as maybe the key to financial success rather than to financial oblivion. It's a good reminder of what a delicate thing it is to create a really fine work of art in any discipline, and how dangerous it is to interfere with that.